afternoon folks, welcome back to the channel. Got special guest Silver Fox here today and we are working on his bike. For some reason he wants slower acceleration. So he's got himself a 16-tooth sprocket from Hitchcock's. I'll pop a link below to replace the, what is on it? 15-tooth sprocket that comes as standard. Reason being, you've heard a lot of good things about it, haven't you?
Yeah, everybody says it's a game changer. I'm not 100% sure it's right for me, but for what it costs, it's worth a go.
I'll give it you back before I drop it on your tank, because we all know I like denting tanks.
So, as you've probably noticed, I've got a different foot peg and gear lever set up. I've got the 650 GT foot pegs on. If you notice, there's a little pop mark there on the output shaft, opposite the split. It's always worth putting a centre pop mark on there so that when you're replacing it you can easily find the correct position where you like it. 8mm spanner.
And you've got to remove that bolt all the way, haven't you?
You have. On the exhaust system I've got, you can't actually get it all the way out, but it's clear of the recess on the shaft, so hopefully, oh, there you go. Hopefully it comes off.
Easy job.
The next job, we need to get the sprocket cover off. We've got 3 cap head Allens here.
That's 5mm.
Which I don't need.
So that's his sprocket exposed. On the output shaft is a large 30mm nut, and there is also a washer, flange washer on the back that's bent over onto one of the flats to stop it undoing. That's not been put on terribly well. Personally, I would put that straight onto a flat rather than onto a connel Allen.
Also, it's interesting to note that this is a lock nut.
It's a lock nut and got a flange on it, but they've done a bit of a half-baked job of doing that, haven't they?
You might just notice as well, because I can't leave things as they are, I've got a bit of a blingy chain on as well.
So, next job is to unflatten that washer using a sharp little drift chisel.
It's worth getting this really quite flat, otherwise it might interfere getting the nut off.
And then just use a large parallel pin punch just to flatten that off. It's got a nice flat edge on it, just to help get that flat.
Now, several ways to get this nut off. In an ideal world we'd take the chain off and use a special tool to hold the sprocket, but because we've got a windy gun, we're going to put it in first gear, put the brake on and see how we go on from there. As you can see, that's in gear.
He's put it in first gear, and I'm also going to hold the back brake on whilst the Silver Fox tries to spin it off, and we shall see how we go. Would you like any lubricant on that?
It wouldn't do any harm.
My favourite lube.
Should be plenty.
Firmly on the back brake.
Here we go. Straight off.
Easy job.
It's just the lock nut. There you go. Wonderful. No problem. Right, now to get the sprocket off, we need to slacken the chain right off so we can lift the chain off the sprocket. So we're going to loosen the rear wheel and move it as far forward as it'll go. Okay, so we need to loosen the chain adjusters.
So that's his brass bullet to go on the end, and a bronze nut to replace the 2 standard 12mm nuts.
I don't actually produce these for people, there's too much work in them. I just made them for myself because I can.
They're just for him, so you can't have them. Selfish, Graham, selfish. You can see now he's loosened it, so it's given a lot of play, so you'll be able to lift the chain forward and pull the sprocket straight off the output shaft.
I'm not so sure, we might not need a little bit more. I don't think there's enough play.
Pull it all together and then take it out. There's enough clearance.
Just.
There you go.
Right, let's have a count, make sure it is. Top one's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Yes, it is. Now, and this might be a little bit more of a wiggle. Ah, it's going, there you go. I'm just inspecting this to make sure it's flat enough. You can see where it's been used, but that's perfectly flat enough. You need to make sure this is actually seated, because if you actually don't get it seated and then put the nut on, you're trapping the splines instead of making sure it's seated properly.
It won't do out.
So, there we go.
Let's just have a look at that nut. It's a bit of an interesting... No, it's got the back. Why is the back cut out of that going?
So it doesn't gnarl over the thread. It's just so it's got a pushing face.
It avoids the... so it doesn't touch the splines really,
Yep.
isn't it, I think?
Yep. So, replace the nut. Right, stop there. Now I'm not going to tighten it with windy gun, but I'm just going to run it up. So...
Do you want to...
I think we'll need to pull the wheel back first to take a bit of slack out of the chain.
Yeah.
Because we want it riding over the sprocket.
Yeah. So he's just roughly pulling the wheel back just to take the slack out of the chain, just to get that tight, and then he'll do that up properly at the end.
That'll do for tightening. So just to make it clear, I'm not tightening it with windy gun, I'm just going to run it on till it sort of nips up. So have we got a brake on?
Yeah.
That'll do. And we'll tighten
Brake's still on. So he's not doing it to a set torque.
Windy gun didn't run it on really.
Didn't give it a chance.
There you go. I'm happier with a bar anyway. That's tight enough for me. And now we've got to put
That's the Silver Fox torque, which looked to me about 50 foot-pounds.
I think it was a bit more than that. Let me just have a feel.
Ooh,
That's tight enough.
That's about 58 foot-pounds. And using a little chisel drift to knock that tab washer over. This time properly onto the flat rather than onto the corner of the nut. You call it a corner, what do you call the edges of the nut?
Corner's as good as anything. I'm going to put the other flat on as well, so if you just take your brake off, that should be neutral. Belt and braces, it's better to do two than...
So he's putting two flats on because he's not confident it was 58 foot-pounds.
I've just been brought up by my father, as it was an engineer, to it's always best to do belt and braces rather than just one. So I'm positive now that nut is not going to come loose.
What did you think the official torque for that nut is though?
Oh, it's 100 and something, I think.
That's a lot of torque.
It's a lot of torque, and
it's not going anywhere.
It's not necessary. It's on splines. All it's doing is holding it on the splines.
If you disagree, comment below.
Yes. Okay. As you can see, the sprocket cover, it throws all the grease and gummins onto here. So I'm going to clean this before I refit it.
While we're here, you notice these two red marks here. That's his rivet link on his new chain, and he marked them red just so on a visual inspection it's just easy to keep an eye on if they're behaving. If he hadn't quite riveted them enough and it looked like the side plate were coming off, it's just one of those things, it's easy to check. I also like to have them marked just when you're cleaning and lubricating your chain, because then you know how many times you've gone round it. He brushed his teeth with that this morning.
Okay, so I've cleaned it up. There's no point obsessing because it's going to get dirty as soon as you put it back on, but I've got all the bulk of it out. So I'm just going to refit this. I've copper slipped the bolts already.
So now it's all back together and he's just fanning around with his back wheel adjusting his chain. What's a bit of bling on your wrist?
Oh, it's just I've had that for donkey's years.
Looks like a girl. So you've been for your initial spin.
Yep.
What do you think between the standard 15.2 sprocket and the replacement 16.2 sprocket? Is it an improvement on your initial couple of mile ride?
Right, the initial couple of mile ride, it's no different. It sets off perfectly fine because I was worried that it was going to be a little bit too high in first gear and a bit awkward. Seems absolutely fine. Throughout 40, 50, 60, 70, it seems to have dropped the revs by about 250 revs in top. So I suspect if you're going a long way up motorway or anything like that, it's going to be more comfortable. But for everyday riding, it hasn't made an apparent difference on such a short ride, which is a good thing. So you get a bit more MPG, perhaps a bit more comfortable on motorway, but without any downside on normal day riding. So initially, sort of a cautious thumbs up.
Very good.